Right, then 100 test match between Australia and India, and it's turned out to be a memorable one for the Indian team, not so much for the host. I'll mention two very important landmarks that the Indian team managed to reach with this particular win. Firstly, it's their fourth win at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, which makes it their most successful ground overseas. There's no other international venue where they've won four test matches. The other, in the last 2 decades, this is their fifth win in Australia, and that's most by any international team, matched only by South Africa. You're watching ESPN for Match Day. I'm Nikhil Nas, joined by Tom Moody and Akash Chopra. And I'm going to start with the man who, when the entire country here in India were biting their nails and they were tense at 19 for 2, he actually sent a tweet out with a new scheme saying that, don't worry, I'll give your money back if India doesn't win, because he was rather confident. You were, weren't you, Akash?
I was very confident, and it also helps that I've not taken money from anyone. So I obviously that money back guarantee is as good as gold. But yes, see, 19 for 2, early hiccups and all of that. There is a quality bowling attack, and you know that there is an opening of frailty there. Mayank Agarwal hasn't looked the part, and there is a possibility you lose a wicket or two. But then 70 was never going to challenge India. See, that's how. In the end, cookie crumbles. This is how test matches are played. The last one was a bit of an aberration where teams get bowled out for 36. It does not happen. So at the lead of 53 was not that bad. It's just that one horror hour and India was out of it. And then India couldn't even take a single wicket in the second, or rather a single wicket in the second innings. So that's how you actually, the matches tend to pan out. So I was least concerned because a look at the pitch also will tell you it is a decent pitch to bat on. Just don't go by the number of runs that has been scored or the lack of it. It is still a decent batting surface. And on a decent batting surface, a team that has scored like 300 plus runs in the first innings, you would expect them to cross 70 without too many hiccups.
Tom, what would you say Australia could have done any differently on this particular day? And I'm just talking about the Australian batting. Or were they just hoping against hope? Because 70 is what best you could hope for, even though you had someone like Green on the crease, who's known to get a lot of runs in first-class cricket.
Yeah, look, Australia had lost the game well and truly before this fourth day. Their batting performance in the first innings, only scoring 195, was well below an acceptable total, in those conditions. And in their second innings, only getting to 200. Now, this is an alarming trend for Australia. Their lack of ability to put together, considerable totals, but also an alarming trend that a side that's becoming more and more obviously dependent upon one or two players. And you don't want, in Test cricket, that to be the case. You need everyone making contributions at different times.
All right. As things stand right now, I mean, this is probably a situation that Australia didn't envision for themselves, especially after, winning that test match, the first test match, rather easily. Now, I'm going to throw a bigger question at you, Akash. And I know comparisons is something that not everyone enjoys, but would you dare to call it the greatest win for India? And keeping in mind greatest overseas test win for India, let me just specify that. Keeping in mind that you had no Virat Kohli, Shami, one of your outstanding bowlers was out, Umesh got injured, you'd lost the toss, 36 before this. All of these things put into perspective.
One of the finest wins. I would still not say this is the finest win for Team India, even overseas, because Lord's game comes to your mind, where it was absolutely green. We lost the toss. We were asked to bat first, and India was down like about 7 down by T on day one. And from there to win the game convincingly, I thought that was one of the finest wins that I have witnessed. And then there are quite a few more when you look at that 2001 Test match at the Eden Gardens. You're following on. So, and a team has won 16 games in a row. They just trounced you in Wankhede. So what India had at that point in time, we didn't even have Anil Kumble in the side. And the side was actually going through a bit of a transition and all of that. And you still win that game. Also, this will be memorable. This is a memorable, this is fantastic considering what all has happened. The complete annihilation of sorts, an embarrassment of sorts in Adelaide, no Kohli, no Shami, and the reasons that you mentioned. It is one of the finest wins, but the finest, I don't know.
I was just taking a look at overseas wins and not necessarily in India. I mean, I know that Trinidad probably 76 comes to mind where they chase what 400 plus in the fourth innings, Adelaide in Australia. But Tom, one of the finest performance you'll say from the Indian team, whatever you've seen them playing in Australia. Again, you have some reference points there, like Adelaide in 2003, Perth in 2008. But even with those in mind, this has to rank in one of the top performances for India.
Yeah, look, without a doubt, it's an outstanding performance from the team to be able to recover the way they have recovered with all the various challenges that they've faced, with players leaving, with injuries and everything else that goes with it. But, I suppose that's the beauty of Test cricket. And I think that's also the beauty of two teams that are pretty evenly matched. You're going to get these, stunning comebacks and you certainly wouldn't have it if you had an Australian team that was a dominant team like the era of McGrath, Warne, Ponting. That team wouldn't have given, the Indian team an inch after that Adelaide defeat. They would have been all over them and you could have virtually closed the book at a 4-0. But I think what we're seeing is two teams that are pretty evenly balanced and both teams have had their injuries and form issues and they're scrapping and what India have done in this second test is they've scrapped and shown enormous character to bounce back from would have been a very, very disappointing loss in Adelaide.
Since you talk about that team which had the likes of McGrath and Shane Warnes and Ricky Ponting, probably that puts into perspective the win that came in Adelaide in 2003. Akash, let's now talk about the man of the match, if ever there was one. He's the one who's dominated. I think will be spoken of very highly now. Ajinkya Rahane. I don't know where to start with him, Akash, whether we should talk about his captaincy, his batting, the leader of men, all those things that impressed you about Ajinkya in this test match.
The only thing that he did not do right was not calling it right at the toss. And that also turned out to be a blessing in disguise because Australia was 3 down in the first session. They were bowled out on day one on a decent batting surface. Indian bowlers actually stood up and got counted because all of us felt that after what happened in Adelaide, the first couple of sessions at Melbourne will decide the fate, at least from India's point of view, because when you're coming after such a huge loss from a position of strength, then there are self-doubts, and one session going away from you could just be it, that last straw that will break the camel's back, so to speak. But he was good. He made those instinctive changes that happened with Ravichandran Ashwin on day one, first change bowler, even though you had 3 fast bowlers in the team, playing as many as 5 bowlers. Looked like a gamble at that point in time, but turned out fine because Umesh got injured and Jadeja got runs. So everything that he did was like Midas. Whatever you touch turns to gold. So his captaincy was outstanding. Make no mistake, he is a good captain. He understands the game quite nicely because instincts are based on your understanding of the game, and his understanding of the game is phenomenal. Therefore he's able to make those nice instinctive changes, and that really fares well for someone who's the deputy or who's filling in for a captain. You can look at him as whenever a need arises, there is a captain who's capable of leading this team. And then the batting. See, batting was far more critical in my opinion because Pujara did not hasn't fired in now 4 innings. And there is a spot at the opening slot where you're 2 down for not much on the board. India was 60 for 3. And that's where Ajinkya Rahane's calmness, the batting, the class, right till the end, batting the entire second day. I think that's where you seal the deal as far as I'm concerned, because batting was that soft spot. And once you take care of it, bowling would take care of itself. That's almost now written in stone.
Tom, of course, you've spoken about, how you've been impressed with Ajinkya Rahane, the captain, and of course, the batsmanship that also is shown. But clearly, there must have been things that happened, behind the scenes. We're not privy to what may have happened in the dressing room, but just for him to inspire his team from where they were in Adelaide to this sort of a performance, clearly he's a leader of men too.
Yeah, look, I think that there's many parts that go to this response from India. Obviously, the number of changes that were made. So you've got players that weren't directly exposed to that match in Adelaide, so they're not carrying the scars of what happened there. they're looking very much with a new set of eyes, seeing it as a great opportunity to have an impact in the series. So there's that. The other thing is that in a way it's not a bad thing when you have a setback like that. You hand the reins over to a new captain who actually has got quite a calm and understated approach, and I think that also helps you go into a challenge after a major setback. And I think, as I mentioned previously, during the Test match, the most impressive thing for me about Rahani's leadership was he just let his actions do the talking. It was nothing more than that. His body language from a leadership perspective, I thought, was very measured. It was very decisive, but very understated. The way he batted, well, you can keep talking about superlatives, but it was just a classy innings under enormous pressure. But it was also one that was done in a very understated, gentlemanly way, if I could put it that way, where he just knew he had to get the business done and he didn't want to make a fuss about it. He just wanted to get to work and show that to the rest of his team that we've got some business to do here. We're going to have to work hard and we're going to have to, fight through that. And I think, but people like that tend to attract, followers, if I could put it that way. And clearly that team that had all those changes were more than happy to jump on his back and drive this Australian team into defeat.
Interesting point, Akash, that Tom makes there of those fresh players that came in, didn't have the scars from Adelaide, also had some sort of an impact in the performance that was churned out by the two debutants in Siraj and Shubman Gill.
Absolutely. In fact, so Shubman Gill, for starters, see, a lot of people also believe that he should have started in Adelaide. And then once you played Prithvi Shaw, then there was some amount of backing for Prithvi Shaw because it's just not fair. But now when Shubman Gill plays the way he has, of course, rode his luck, lived a little bit of a charmed life in the first innings. But then 45 is still 45, which included some beautiful drives off the front foot against the faster bowlers and against spin of Nathan Lyon, pulled a couple of balls quite nicely, gave him the right kind of confidence. And the second innings, I thought, was just sensational. It left you in awe because here is Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins. Mitchell Starc already had dismissed Mayank Agarwal. There was some amount of pressure, but as if he was batting on a different pitch against a different set of bowlers and not playing his first Test match where he was not dominating because he wanted to dominate. It was just his natural style of play that he's seeing the ball, he's hitting the ball, it's there to be hit, and he's capable enough to just hit those balls for boundaries, and they were so pleasing to the eye. I think we have just seen a start of a fantastic journey of a future batting superstar from India who made his debut here. There's one thing that I have a reservation with regards to Shubman is that he stays besides the ball quite a bit, and somebody who stays besides the ball quite a bit, will he be the opener, the successful opener in 10 years' time? We shall find out. He may actually go slightly like 3 or 4 later on. But at this point in time, it's all hunky-dory. It's looking wonderful when he's batting the way he did.
I guess those are the perils of a new age T20 cricketer. But I'm going to stay with the two debutants. Tom, coming to you on that one. One is the performances that, Siraj got, 5 wickets. Shubman gets you 45, 35, not out in the second inning. It's also the character that they showed because there were times where they were facing a lot of heat. It was a tense moment in the match. So as someone who's sitting outside, maybe as a coach or as captain, you're also looking at the character. And at that front, do you think both of them did rather well?
Outstanding. Shubman Gill's got a similar sort of understated approach to Rahane in a way. He doesn't look flustered. Certainly, he didn't look like he was playing, his first Test match, and this was the beginning of his international career. He looked very much at ease and comfortable in that environment. It's like he'd been there for a year or two already. It's only going to look up for him. There's no question about that. And I also agree with Akash with regards to, where he may end up in the batting order. But certainly to cut your teeth as an opener in the early parts of your career is certainly only going to do him good than anything else, even if he does end up at 3 or 4, and time will tell you that. Mohammad Siraj, I thought, was really impressive as well. We're talking another wonderful Indian cricket story here too. This is a young guy that came from very humble, upbringing, had limited opportunities, got his IPL chance at the Sunrisers before he then went to Royal Challengers Bangalore, and now he's playing, Test cricket. And to me, he looked every bit at home as a Test cricketer. I loved his enthusiasm, whether he had the ball in his hand at the top of his mark or whether he was in the field. It was nearly like every single run, which is what you want from a captain and a coach's perspective, was just, it's so important that he chased it down with everything he possibly had, threw himself around the field with this sort of youthful exuberance. But my gosh, when you threw him the ball, he knew exactly what he was doing. He understood his role. He bowled the right length. He challenged the batsman's front pad constantly, and he's quick enough to disturb top order players. So again, I think India have found a keeper there, and he's a bowler that will thrive overseas as well, because the way he presents the scene, he can swing the ball and he can get some movement off the pitch. So he's a great find for India.
All right. The only thing probably Siraj really needs to work on is his DRS calls, but I guess that will come as time progresses. Okay, Akash, we've spoken about Steve Smith earlier in our episodes about how he's been struggling, but it's a similar situation that India finds themselves in with regards to Cheteshwar Pujara, because I'm guessing he's as important to the Indian team as Steve Smith is for Australia. And now it's becoming a sort of a pattern. It's Pat Cummins with the ball in his hand. It's in that corridor of uncertainty, takes the edge and he's out.
Which is slightly troubling, yes, because Pujara is that glue that keeps the batting order together. And when you are minus Virat Kohli and you're happy to play only 5 batsmen and go with an extra bowler, because that strategy may not change, and we might actually have a new opening combination now in the 3rd Test match. So when you look at it from all those vantage points, the importance of Cheteshwar Pujara just increases manifold. And he's got a few great seeds. Let's be fair, some balls were almost unplayable. There were the action replays, bowled from slightly from the corner of the crease. The ball is darting in the air with the angle and then just holds its line, finds the outside edge. A ball that he could not have responded differently, even 10 out of 10 times, because stumps, he can't leave it. He sees the ball coming in. He can't assume that the ball is going to now dart away after pitching. So those were a couple of fantastic balls that dismissed him. But then having said all that, you're up against a top quality bowling opposition. They will come very hard at a guy who's got your number now. He'll have to figure out a way to now bounce back, because if India were to go ahead and now win at least one of the 2 Test matches or both to win the series, then Pujara has to score runs. India can't do without Pujara scoring runs. It's as simple as it is Steve Smith and Team Australia. So if Smith doesn't fire, you can only win a Test match. You won't win a series. If Pujara doesn't fire, you will win a Test match, but you're unlikely to win a series without Pujara.
Tom, I'm trying to scratch my head and come up with reasons why Pujara may be struggling. Probably one of those things, unlike most other cricketers, he hasn't had any international cricket in the last 9 months or so. He didn't play the IPL. He wasn't part of the limited over series as well. No matter how much you practice, that game time is something that may have been missing in Pujara's case.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think you also got to respect the fact that, he's having to weather the storm of, arguably one of the best fast bowlers of this current time with a relatively new ball, because he's coming in, reasonably early every innings, and he's having to weather that storm of Pat Cummins. And, Pat Cummins has got a habit of knocking over top order players. His record shows you that. So look, he is human, and he has some work to do and some scores to make. But the thing is that we only have to look back to the Adelaide Test match, and from memory, I think he occupied the crease for an enormous amount of time. He got a 43, and I think he faced something like 160 balls. And he really broke the back of the Australian attack then, and he, if anything, gave India a chance to win that Test match, but in an incredibly unusual circumstance where Australia managed to turn the tide on India, that the game sort of, went the complete opposite direction. But I wouldn't be concerning myself too much with Pujara. We all know he's a fine player. We all know that he, has proven that he can, stand up in conditions in Australia, because he's done it before very successfully. So, I would just be trusting him and if anything, just giving him that positive feedback that just remember, that marathon innings of 160 balls in Adelaide, you helped us set up the test match and we then just made an absolute mess of it. India could potentially be 2-0. Let's face it. They could potentially be 2-0 if they didn't have that massive blow up in Adelaide, which was such a shot from nowhere. Tim Payne, got an innings, played a magnificent innings to get crawl Australia back into some sort of parity in the first innings, and then it sort of all blew up in such an unusual circumstances. So I wouldn't be reading too much into the likes of Pujara.
So, Tom, with that in mind, you reckon this longish break, this New Year break, couldn't have come at a better time for Australia? Probably will give them a chance to regroup, clear their minds.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to help both teams from an injuries perspective. You look at Umesh Yadav's got an extra period of time to try to get set for the third test. David Warner's got more time to get ready for the third test, and also mentally, the teams have got a chance to reset. But let me just make this point: we're playing in very unusual circumstances with these bio bubbles, and players can go stir crazy in that bio bubble. And if they're not playing and active and just having time off and having nets in preparation for a long wait for the next game, that also can have a negative effect, more so mentally than anything else. So you need to find a real, the right balance to be able to how to manage that time to your advantage, both from a preparation, recovery point of view, but also more importantly from a mental perspective, because there could be some players, and if not the team, going into a bit of a neutral mode and being caught out come the first day of the third test.
One way of managing that extra time that you have is think about selection, because plenty to think about for both the teams at the moment. Akash, we'll start with India on this one. Mayank Agarwal, now questions are going to be asked. We've already heard from Ajinkya Rahane, who said that Rohit is all set. They've had a phone conversation. He's keen to get on with it. Do you think Mayank now becomes the guy who goes out?
I think so. I think he is going out because you expected him to score runs. He didn't in the first test match. He's not got runs in the second test match. Unfortunately, he hasn't even looked like getting runs. Sometimes you actually are there. You're spending enough time, like what Tom earlier mentioned, that you've at least eaten enough deliveries. So you've occupied the crease for a significantly longer period of time, even if the scoreboard hasn't moved as much. But you know that you're getting closer to your best, and it's only a matter of an innings where you'll turn it around. But in this case, I think 4 innings with Rohit Sharma waiting in the wings. If it wasn't for Rohit Sharma, say for example, Rohit wasn't available at all, and if you were to choose between Prithvi Shaw, Shubman Gill and Mayank Agarwal, you'll say, okay, give him one more test because he's done well. First 12 test matches, he got over 1,000 runs, nearly 1,000 runs in test cricket in the first 10-12 test matches, including 2 double centuries, runs in Australia. You want to back that guy. But in this case, the tempting option is just sitting outside. So you will slot him in, and where else is the place? If you want to play Rohit Sharma, of course you do. So where does he fit in? You do not want to compromise on your 5-ball bowler theory, because Jadeja has given you valuable runs. Pant plays, and you will only make one possible change, and that is Mayank Agarwal going out in place of Rohit Sharma coming in.
And could be one forced change in case Umesh is not fit. We still don't know his injury status. Then in that case, you might have to hand out a debut to Navdeep Saini as well. Tom, from Australia's point of view, what happens if David Warner doesn't come? I mean, is there any other option, or you stick with Joe Burns then?
I don't think they can stick with Joe Burns. I think he's gone. And I think he would know that. And I think most of Australia know that he's had a long enough run of it. And you could, some people may say, well, he got 50 not out in the last test. But the most concerning thing with regards to Joe Burns' form is that for a top order international batsman, you count his first-class cricket and so far these first 2 Test matches, excuse me, he's had 11 innings and he's got one half century, and he hasn't looked really like scoring a run outside that 50. So to me, it's time to turn the page. I was actually surprised he played to begin with, but that's been and gone now. So I think they need to look at alternatives. And obviously Australia are all praying that Warner will be fit. And I personally think he will be fit. Just looking at the vision of what's happening with his preparation just during this Test match. I think Warner will come in for Burns, and it's just what they do with the middle order is another question, because Travis Head is one that will be thinking he's on very thin ice. So what we might see is a switch with Wade moving from the opening position back into his position in the middle order, which I think is the right thing to do, instead of Travis Head and then Will Pucovski making his debut in the 3rd Test.
Because Tom talks about that middle order, Akash, one positive to come out for Australia on day 4, other than, of course, Cummins bowling, was, the batsman in Cameron Green. It's the first time, viewers outside of Australia or people who don't follow first-class cricket in Australia may have seen. He looked quite the batsman, especially the way he was handling the spinners, a tall lad bouncing down the wicket or going back, very, very assured on the pitch.
Oh, he looked good. We all thought that we'll see a lot of this in the first Test match itself, or then in the first innings of this Test match. It just took some time coming. It's only 3 innings, though, to be fair. But he's looking good. He's already got a century against India in one of the warm-up games. And he is someone who's giving you a lot of confidence, and you want to invest in him, because he is like the real thing, is what you say. Going by your gut feeling of what you see, and also by the numbers that he's produced thus far. But my only concern, so that is actually a great positive, but the only concern is when you have a youngster in the side, a youngster or two making a debut, then you want your seniors to stand up, you want to make their job easier. That 45 is actually a game-changing innings, could possibly be if, say, Steve Smith had scored 150. So suddenly that 45 is far more valuable. So that is what you expect from the seniors. That's how you blood in the youngsters. If everybody is on thin ice, everybody is not scoring runs, then it becomes just doubly difficult for a youngster to come and then express himself, because the team is constantly under pressure and he's dealing a different pressure of his own. So Cameron Green is like maybe somebody in an Indian team as well, because both teams' batting is looking rather fragile. So when there is lack of support from the seniors, the big guys in the team, then the pressure is just a little too much for the youngsters to handle.
Tom, thoughts on what Akash just spoke about? The seniors actually sometimes getting inspired by looking at this youngster who's ready to spend time on the pitch, is looking good with the bat in his hand.
Yeah, the most impressive thing that I see with Cameron Green, apart from the obvious that he seriously looks like he can bowl, with great control at good pace, but he looks like a genuine top order player. Defensively, his forward defence against Jasprit Bumrah was watertight, and I would imagine, not that I've in a position at my ripe old age to be doing it, but I'd imagine facing Jasprit Bumrah is not an easy task, and one of the hard things to do against high quality fast bowling like Jasprit Bumrah is to make a considerable stride forward and defend it with composure. And that's exactly what Green has done, and he's looked well organised. And he also has shown, not just in this innings today, but you only have to look at his brief history. He's also shown the qualities to be able to bat long periods of time. So he's not just your bits and pieces all-rounder. He's a pure batsman that's got the qualities of a pure batsman. He's got the game as in a technique that is a robust technique, but he's got the temperament to bat long periods, which is what you want from your top 6. You want them to be able to bat for 6 hours if that's what's required. And I just think that, it's only going to be uphill, not uphill, it's only going to be up from here on for Cameron Green, and he's going to be certainly an exciting one to watch.
Not just you, Tom. Most 20-year-olds wouldn't want to face Jasprit Bumrah in the form that he is at the moment. But we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us, sharing your thoughts on what's been a very engrossing test match. Now, we don't know where the next test match is going to be, whether it's going to be in Melbourne or whether it happens in Australia. All we can tell you, the series is nicely poised. You're watching ESPN Cricket for Matchday.